Hello, everyone. Um, can you guys hear me? So, you can just use the React uh emojis if you can hear me. Okay. All right. So, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Patricia, for introducing me, and uh, welcome all the viewers and especially our guests. My name is Mark. I am a full stack web developer working remotely for a Japanese company. So I will be talking about monorepos and turborepos. So the talk is supercharging your monorepos with turborepo. So I won't be discussing longer. So I will skip ahead a lot of things. So let's start. So before we understand what is a monorepo, we have to understand what is a polyrepo. So a polyrepo is just a traditional approach, one repo per app or service. So we as a developer or programmer and we use GitHub, basically we create, for example, in our visuals here on the right side, we create a repository for a front end framework and for a back end framework and maybe another front end framework, but different purpose. So yeah, this is a definition of a polyrepo. We make three repositories for one project. So in the next bullet, you have a React app in one repo, maybe an admin panel in one other repo. So these three apps share a lot of the same components and types because Next.js is also React and the other one is also React. So you copy paste them, and then now you're maintaining two copies of the same code. So what the issue is, sometimes we have code from different repos that we copy and then have to put it on another repo. So for example, is the backend provides a code that we can also use that in the front end, and we can also that use that in the admin. So yeah, that's the one of the issues maybe. So you're copy pasting code and now you're maintaining two copies of the same code. So another is you fix a bug in one and then forget to fix it in the other. So when working with a polyrepo setup, um, when the backend updates, the front end would possibly, you know, have problems because the backend has many changes, has major changes, and the front end doesn't know that there are changes. So yeah, this is an explanation of a polyrepo. So this is like what we do traditionally as developers. So I put a statement here. Polyrepo isn't wrong. It's just where most of us start. Mm. As a beginner in programming and a introduction to Git, this is how we start. So we discussed polyrepo. Next is the monorepo. So from the term mono and then repo, mono singular, and then repo is repository. So all your services live in one repository. So in the visual here, you create a Git repository and all your services, all that I mentioned, the front end, the back end, and the another front end code lives on the same repository. So no more copy pasting. Shared code lives in one location or via a packages directory, meaning that you can make a uh locate a directory where all your code live shared code lives there and it can be used from different services. Not a monolith. They just live in the same repo. Your apps are still independent. So sometimes people have confusion about what is monorepo and what is a monolith. An example of a monolith is actually, let's say, maybe Next.js. It's a monolithic framework because it's full stack, it has back end, it has front end. Laravel, for those who are familiar with it, it also is a monolithic framework. So yeah, but we are talking about monorepo. So we are talking about services in one repository. Next is atomic changes, updates in one commit. So since it's only a singular repository, and if you want to make changes in the back end and in the front end, you can just uh, commit those changes into one. So you don't have to like visit another repository and then commit the changes there and then go to the another repository and then commit another changes. You can just do it all in once in one repository. So one npm install or pnpm install sets up everything. So I'm going to showcase to you an example of a monorepo. So don't worry, I'll be giving out a link to the GitHub repository on of all the code that I'll be showcasing here in this event. So let's see. So this is an example of a monorepo. So I have apps, and within this apps folder, I have three services. I have the web, I have the API, I have the admin. Web is actually Next.js. API is Nest.js, and the admin is React.js. So I have three services with different frameworks, different libraries that I've been using. So next is I have a folder called packages. And in this folder, we have configurations. This contains configurations for ESLint, Tailwind, types, TypeScript, and the UI. So, okay, I'm gonna show you how it works, how it works when it runs. So I'm going to check out monorepo, and the most interesting thing about setting up a monorepo is you can uh, run three services at the same time. So when I say pnpdev, my command, I can run all those three apps, uh, the front end, the back end, and the another admin, which is another front end. Yeah, so I can run them at the same time. So let's see. Let's open a browser and let's open the Next.js one. So it's going to be localhost 3000. So yeah, I can open the Next.js one, and there's also a button, dark mode. And let's open the React one, which is localhost 51. Oops, sorry, 5173. Oh, look at this. This is from the React folder. And I want to open the backend, although it's backend, but you can actually test it out. So the backend is 3001. So the backend gave me a response, hello world. So it is possible to run three frameworks at the same time. So that is the kind of benefit in having a monorepo. But there is also another benefit is packages. So I did say packages, these are all shared code, meaning that the code here can be reused to different frameworks. Let's say UI, I have a button, I have a code for the button. How can I use that in web? So basically, in package.json, I call out the folder where the button resides, and then if I go to the page, and then that means I can import the button. So basically, I was importing a component from somewhere else. not here in the web folder, like very far apart, like here. So yeah, I can import that button and then now it can be used. So let's go back to the Next.js one. So this is the button. So I'm going to use it in another one. Let's say in admin. This one is React, actually. So I also called it out. I called out the folder where the button resides, and then I go to my app, and here it is. I imported it, and then I use it here. So if I go to the React one, which is 5173, here's it. Button, another button. So it's really fascinating because you don't need to like create a button here in admin and then you have to create a button here in web because that's just too much. We need something to place things as a shared location and then we can reuse it somewhere else. Hmm. So that is my example for one of the packages here. Others are just configurations um, and also types. So I have a folder where I put my types here. So like here, user, blah, blah, blah. And that type can actually be used somewhere else. So I used the type and I imported it here, workspace types user. And then, yeah, I've assigned this variable with a type. So yeah, I've made a variable with, I've made an object with values. So yeah, it's doable. So that is the strong advantage of a monorepo. So I can also build them at the same time. So if I run build, they will build the project, build the web, build the API, and build the admin. So yeah, you don't have like a problem with just going through the folder and then you have to build and then going to another folder and you have to build. You can just do it at once. So that is the very strong advantage with doing a monorepo. Mm. So I guess that's okay. That's it for the monorepo stuff. So why not just use a monorepo then? So the sharing problem is solved, but a new problem appears. Let's say we assume with 5+ apps. Before this, we showed only 3 apps, which is the API, front end, and the admin. And running build across all of them takes time. Remember, the example that I've shown you is just very small. So maybe imagine if your frameworks become larger and larger, if your website becomes larger and larger, the build time would be incredibly longer. So everything rebuilds every time, even apps you didn't touch. No caching. Same input, same work repeated on every one. No way to skip unchanged apps. If you touch one file, everything still runs. So this is the problem Turborepo solves. Okay, so what is Turborepo? So Turborepo is a build system for JavaScript and TypeScript monorepos. So it's just catered for that. And it is also made by Vercel and it's open source. It sits on top of your existing monorepo, and you only need to have small to no rewrites needed. Mm. It gives you 3 things: a task pipeline, a defines which tasks depend on which, caching, never runs the same work twice, parallelism, runs independent tasks at the same time. So it doesn't change how you write your code, it just makes your monorepo fast. So that's why it's called turbo repo, because it's turbo. So this is an image that I've taken from their website. So they have the front end, they have the packages, and they have another folder called docs. And when you run turbo, if you run turbo, there's like a caching involved, and then it gives you out the performance of the build and the lint and the test. So I'm going to show you how to set up a turbo repo turbo repo initialization. So let's clear all of this and let's create a new folder. Okay, there's 0. So turbo repo, let's make that. And then we go to that folder. All right. So the installation process for turbo repo is just this. If you're not familiar with PNPM, I suggest you have to research that. But there are actually alternative options. If you use NPM, they have it. If you use Yarn, they have it. But for me personally, I use PNPM. So here, so we're going to install Turbo Repo. So it also asks what kind of package manager you want to use. So obviously, I want to use PNPM. So it's going to download some files. Don't worry, because in this installation, it's actually a monorepo with turbo repo. So it's giving you like a template to work on. Uh, Okay, it's going to take a lot of time, but yeah. Um, if you visit the Turbo Repo website, the installation is actually very simple. You can install Turbo Repo immediately, or you can install Turbo Repo with an existing repository. So they have that. Okay. All right. So it's showing us what services it's going to install, libraries, and it's going to install dependencies on its own. So as you can see, this is a Turbo Repo template. It has the docs and the web. So both of these are Next.js. And we have like a file here called turbo.json. So this is the only thing that you need, turbo.json. And in the package.json, you'll have to like install turbo. And that's it. So let's test it out. So to run a monorepo using turbo, you only have to type turbo and then turbo dev like that. Okay. So right now, turbo repo gives you a terminal, a custom terminal that you can view. So I can view the logs for web, and I can view the logs for docs. So obviously they're both Next.js, but yeah. So right now they are both running. So we go to browser again, localhost 3000, and then so yeah, turbo repo. So yeah, it's opening. And then we open for the docs one, 01. So yeah, well, there's not actually much difference. It's a template. Okay. So yeah, it has a terminal like this. But if you want to, just like before, we have to close this one and go to turbo.json. If you don't want that kind of terminal, you can just make it into this stream. So if you go to turbodev again, yeah, it won't show you the exact design of the terminal. It will show you the logs per service. So docs and web. So yeah. So what is the advantage of Turborepo, as I mentioned before in the slides? Caching. So if I try to build, it will build the Next.js for docs and web. So since this is like the first time it's going to build, so it's going to write the cache for it. So successful build, and if we do it again, okay. So if we did it again, it immediately finishes the build. So meaning that we didn't change anything in our code for docs and web. So Turbo Repo thinks that okay, the developer didn't change anything. Okay, I'm just gonna call on the cache. It's has already been built. So what if I try to change a file here? Let's say I'm going to remove this and run turbo build again. So if you notice that I changed something in, where is it? In docs folder, but not on the web. So it says that one has been cached and two were successful. So if you notice, the web just immediately finishes, but the docs have to rebuild again, meaning that uh the web was already cached and there were no changes. So Turborepo understands that, but docs, Turborepo notices there is a change in the docs folder with your code, and then have to rebuild it again and then cache it again. So that's the efficiency of Turborepo. It's really fast. It's really better for scalable projects where you have like many services. So this is also beneficial for those who want to use Docker. Mm. So yeah, um, to notice, there is nothing much changes on Turborepo, implementing Turborepo in your project. You just only have to add this file, and then you have to replace the files here. I mean, replace the wordings here instead of pnpm, just turbo run build, turbo run dev. So I have to explain what this configuration is. So there's build and there's lint and there's check types. So in turbo build, I have already shown that. So it will cache for the build. It will also cache for the lint. And for check types, it will also cache for the check types. For dev, obviously, we don't need to cache it because it's dev. You are actively testing the websites that you are currently doing. So you don't need to cache the dev. But these three, you can cache them actually. Okay. So if you want to like, combine these three, you can actually do that. Okay. So there's an there's like an error for lint, but it's just lint. You can actually combine that turbos, so turbo check types and then turbo build. So you can run check types and then after that you can run build at the same time. So yeah. So here's the build. So obviously it finishes fast because there was already a cache. Check types, there's no cache yet. So yeah. So yeah, 5 successful, 5 total, 2 cached. Hmm. So that is a benefit of Turborepo. So going back to the slides, oops, sorry. We're going to setting up the Turborepo in an existing monorepo. I think I should not be like explaining that too much anymore because like I said, you only need this configuration, the turbo.json, and then you have to install turbo, and then you have to change all these script commands here. So basically, I've just copy pasted my monorepo and just added turborepo. That's that's it actually. It's a very simple setup, but still, at the same time, it gives you performance, build performance. So I don't need to explain more with what I did with this one. So before and after, so in monorepo, we did pnpm-r. So if you don't know what pnpm-r, so if you go back to on the monorepo only without turborepo, I use this pnpm-bar, I mean dash r, meaning it's recursive, meaning it's going to check all the folders if there is a package there. So if I do this, let's say, for example, uh, 0 monorepo. Oops. Okay. Oops. Okay. Oh wait, no, it's 1. Put 0. So you can actually just do this npm install and then checks if there are packages within these folders like package.json and package.json. So yeah, it will install it for you. You don't have to like go through these folders. Like you have to move around, navigate to those folders. But if you have Turborepo, you actually don't need to do this because in Turborepo, this is what you need actually. Okay. So monorepo and then turbo caching. So in a standard monorepo, it doesn't have caching. It doesn't skip unchanged apps, so it has to build again. With turborepo, it can config added, turbo isn't that JSON, and then new dependency added is turbo at the workspace root. That's it. That's the only thing that you can do to migrate to turborepo. So the key takeaways is PNP Workspace solves sharing. So in a monorepo, yeah, it solves sharing. Configs and types are packages too. So like I said, I shown you that you can put all your shared code there. Turbo repo solves speed. Caching means you never rebuild what hasn't been changed. As again, adding turbo repo to an existing mono is one config file and one dependency. Okay. And the monorepo structure stays the same. Turbo repo just runs your tasks smarter. So you don't need to do a lot of changes with your monorepo to adhere to Turborepo. So next is, oops, should you use monorepo or should you add Turborepo? So use a monorepo when 2 or more apps share components, types, and configs, like I said. If you want atomic cross-app changes in one commit, or if you want your team to work across multiple apps regularly, let's say you have 3 members and they also want to work on front end, API, admin. Add Turborepo when your monorepo has 3+ packages with build steps and CI builds are getting slow. If you are trying to deploy this in a workflow like GitHub Actions, Turborepo is uh, better to use because it's fast and you want caching without a complex setup. But somehow, all this monorepo stuff and turborepo stuff is kind of like, I don't know, maybe I'm not interested in all of that. So you don't have to bother if all your apps are truly independent, no shared code. So maybe you don't have any code that can be shared through API or another React project. So you don't need it. You don't need to monorepo every services. And you only have one app. Maybe if you have a client that asks you to do full stack, but you are going to use Next.js, of course, you're not going to use a monorepo because Next.js handles full stack already. It has API and it has front end and back end, so you don't need that. If your team structure likes to work traditionally and the members work on their repo that are assigned to, so if you want to keep things traditional, maybe, members just going to go to the API repository, the other member goes to the front end repository, the usual. Maybe your team doesn't want to work on the same repository. Mm. So that's about Turbo Repo and Monorepo. But I have things that you can research upon. So here are the things that maybe you have maybe like take interest of. So remote caching. So share the build cache across your team and see if they ever sell or self-hosted. So Turbo Repo actually has remote caching. So remember that we build uh previously, we build the API, the web, and the admin. What if that build cache can be uploaded somewhere else so that my other developer can download that cache and maybe won't have to build it again. So there is so-called remote caching, and it's a good read. I haven't tried this one personally because it didn't like feel like important at that time. Next one is turbo prune. So this is just a command. Basically, you're just selecting which service to build. So I was thinking like, I guess I want the front end to build. I'm not gonna be interested in building the API and blah blah blah. So yeah, you can use this command to build the specific service that you want. Oops. So next is NX. So while Turborepo is open source, there is another competitor called NX. Actually, I'm not really familiar with it. So NX is more powerful alternative to Turborepo with more features and more configuration. Um, let's say Turborepo is for beginners and NX is for the big stuff, for the big boys. So also this one has a business model. So I guess if you want truly open source, you can just use NX. uh Change sets. This one is talks about, in a monorepo, if you want to have versioning, like package versioning, like for example, I want to make this as version 1.0.0, oops, 1.0.0, but you'll have to do it manually to other package.json. You have to edit this one too, make it 1.0.0, and then you have to edit others as well to 1.1.0. So yeah. So change sets, it's a turborepo feature that you can actually like parallel change the versions of all the packages in your monorepo. Next one is turborepo generators. So obviously we scaffold new packages, apps packages with turbogen command. So obviously you get tired of creating a shared code. So maybe you have to like new folder, something like this, and then you have to create another package.json, something like this. So it's kind of too much to do. So turbo generators can handle that. It you are like making a template, and then when you run the turbogen command, it will ask you for, okay, what kind of template? Maybe a UI template. So it will automatically create a folder in in your packages folder. So that is Turborepo generators. So this one is okay. This one is actually I just taken this from the Turborepo site. So these are the companies that use Turborepo. So there's Vercel, obviously, because they're the ones who created that. AWS, Microsoft, Netflix, Disney, GitHub, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's actually a very popular tool being used with very prominent companies or names. So yeah, so I guess that's it for my discussion. Sorry if I didn't like dive into it because I cannot explain more or steps because I given the time frame. But you can visit my GitHub repository for the code that I showcased. So you can visit github.com, my user handle, Dev8 BOOT 2026 Turbo Repo. So it's here. So you can clone that repository and maybe test it out if you want. Maybe you can contribute to the code, and that'd be cool. So yeah, thank you guys for listening for about my talk with Turbo Repo. So that's it for me. Um, uh,
Thank you so much, Sir Mark, for your informative presentation about Monorepo and Turborepo. This is certainly will let our viewers learn more about this type of method or technology. So, if any any one of you, one of the viewers, if you have something in mind, please try to type it out on our chat box and try to ask our speaker if you have anything that you're curious about within this topic. So yeah, take your time muna. And go lang. Alright, if you don't mind, Kuya, we will just wait for our viewers to ask their questions, if there are any.
hmm. Okay, guys, give me questions.
Yeah, sige na. Para ano, para no
Mm,
regrets.
mm,
Masabi niyo lahat. Char.
mm.
Baka
So
maya-maya magamit niyo yan.
So I don't know how many of you are full stack web developers, but this discussion that I have is catered towards that for those kind of developers. And maybe someday if you have a client or a project that is big enough, you can use this. Mm,
Eto
okay.
meron. How many
Uh,
times did
mm.
the project deploy when using Monorepo or Turborepo approach?
So how many times did the project deploy when using monorepo or turborepo approach? So, well, I feel like there's more to that question. If we're talking about deployments, let's say uh, into the server, because I tested this before with Docker, and I have discussed previously about turbo prune, meaning that you can only select the service that you want to build. Because in monorepo, you have the API, you the front end, and another front end. What if you want the API only? So yeah, you can make a Docker file commands that you only have to select the specific service. So it's not that the same that you have to do with a non-monorepo approach. Mm. So it's just that let's say if you want to Dockerize every services in your Docker image. So yeah, it would be better. And just like I said in remote caching, if you have remote caching, it would also be better because when you run your CI, GitHub Actions, and in your CI will fetch the remote cache and it will know that, okay, I have done this before. So yeah, I'm gonna skip this. so, so yeah, it's it's kind of a beneficial for CIs actually with the Turbo Repo stuff. Um Okay. Does that answer your question?
So I think pretty much that answers it. Pero again, kuya, like I want to actually ask about task pipeline. Ano to? Can you remind me what it does?
Your task pipeline.
In the Turborepo management, um, like in a Turborepo managed monorepo, how does task pipeline in Turbo JSON differ from traditional NPM script? Baga, ganun ba?
Okay. Well, I've showcased the example of the length and then the check types. If I have to like share again my screen.
Sure, sure. No worries.
Okay. So in the Turbo JSON, you have lint, you have format, and you have check types. Basically, these are actually just tasks that you want to do.
Mm,
So if you want to check the types of every TypeScript application here, because this is a React TypeScript, this one is Nest.js, and this one is Next.js. So obviously they both have TypeScript. So
mm.
what if you want to check the types all together? So that's the purpose. Turbo check types. You have to check the types in parallel. Oh, sorry. I'm in the wrong folder. Oops. So yeah. So yeah, it will showcase like this.
Mm.
Mm.
That's
So
pretty interesting too.
mm. Actually, you can just do more because this is just a template. Because maybe you want to format something. Oh wait, actually there is a format already. But yeah, you can configure this. It's actually easy
Mm,
to configure because check types, it will depends on check types, meaning it will search for the package.json, and if that package.json have this command, it will
mm.
run. So every service that I have, package.json, check types, and then API. There is also, where is it? Check types also. And then in web, there's also check types also. Something like
So
that.
basically, you just customize however you want.
Mm,
Kung
so, mm,
baga,
so I don't, basically, I just don't need to go to the folder to run the check types. I just
mm,
have to like run it in parallel all together. That's what I meant.
okay, okay. So basically, may
Mm.
dalahiya code to just do everything all together, not just individually per folder
Mm,
of file.
mm, mm, mm,
Yeah, okay. So
mm.
anyone, may da pa? Bangin, may da pa kamo curious or something.
Mm,
Ganon. Para, wala, may chika-chika tayo dito.
mm. For those who are okay, for front-end and Python Flask for integration of my image processing project. Now, this is actually very interesting, because I've done this before, and my stack actually was React and then Laravel. Obviously, Laravel doesn't have like TypeScript or something, but it also has package.json. So if you have, let's assume that this admin is Laravel, you can just basically re- update this into PHP artisan serve, and it will run in parallel. So if you have the PHP artisan serve, and what other types, what other commands in Laravel, but you can do that actually. You only need the package.json. So maybe I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with Python. Maybe you can just put your Python command here to run your Python. So yeah, that's what I did. I did a monorepo with Laravel and React, and so it actually worked. Mm. So that's what I did. Mm.
That's pretty interesting talaga. Sana all maraming alam. Charis. Pero like, that's really interesting. Kay, honestly, I've been trying to learn Laravel recently. We talked about this, 'di ba? Nung
Mm.
sync. Grabe, parang pag-dive in ko talaga sa Laravel, parang I kinda this Turborepo and then Monorepo, probably
Mm.
magagamitan ba for class or
Hmm.
class projects?
Yeah, yeah, well, like I've said in my slides, it depends on you on what your team like prefer. Maybe one person wants to do back end, one person wants to do front end, and you agree, all of you agree to work on one repository.
Mm.
uh, but if you don't want a single repository, maybe you want to split
Mm.
repository for backend, repository for front end. I mean, it depends on
Mm.
you guys, but since the tech stack is Laravel and React, I don't think
Mm.
it's necessary to have what do you call this, to combine them as a monorepo, because monorepo and turborepo is catered to JavaScript and TypeScript
Mm.
projects. Although it works, as I shown, I don't know. It's not necessary for me to put Laravel and React all together. Maybe it can
Tama.
be just separate. Mm,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kuya. We
mm,
will move on now to our next speaker. So, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. We definitely learned a lot. So,
Mm.
let us conclude to that.